Let's testify tonight.
Oh God, you've done so much for me. I'm grateful and overwhelmed here at your feet. And I could stay here forever, Lord, but you call me to something more. And I hear you say that you have a plan to use every broken woman and man to display just how good you are. We are your living pieces of art. What good does it do to hide away when all of my scars are a picture of grace? All right. So I will testify of the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. For my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, do you believe it? Has he done it for anyone else? I said, has he done it for anyone else? Cause the God that I serve, he's always at work. Has he done it for anyone else? So come on and testify of the power of God. Come on and tell the world of the hope we have found. For our body was broken, our hearts were made whole, and that's too good to keep to yourself. Come on and testify of the power of God. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify your voice. This is my. So I'm gonna testify. Somebody testify. Come on, take it up. Jesus, my champion, the victor of grace, the only one worthy of all of my praise. Yeah. So come on and testify. Oh, somebody lift him high. Come on, testify of the power of God. I will tell the world of the hope I have found. Oh, for my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Sing it. Oh, my body was broken, my heart was made whole, and that's too good to keep to myself. So I will testify of the power of God. Oh, let's do that right now, Murfreesboro.
And good morning, everybody. Welcome to 2026. You know, and I apologize for the noise. There's a space heater running behind me here because it's a little chilly in here this morning. So that's on me. But hopefully it's not too bad if I'll try to keep the microphone on the other side of me from the heater so that it doesn't cause too much of a racket, but let me know if it does. I'll do my best. And yes, we are using the timer today because I have to. So kind of funny story. So the my wife and my daughter both have birthdays in January. So my wife's birthday was a couple of days ago. My daughter's birthday is at the end of the month. And as many of you know, every year our church does a 40-day fast starting usually in mid January. This year is no exception. And so, because of that, for both my wife and my daughter, you know how a lot of times, like if you have a birthday and there's like a club with restaurants and stuff, then you get like a free whatever during your birthday month. So both my wife and my daughter get all this free stuff in January, and but we have to use it all up before the fast starts, because once the fast starts, then we can't, go out to eat and stuff. So we are going in about a little over an hour and a half. We're going to be heading to Red Robin because both my wife and my daughter get a free burger at Red Robin. So just want to let you know that's the only reason for the tight timing today. I also, since I already mentioned, and by the way, Shwario, good to see you, buddy. First chat of the new year is from our old friend Shwario. And yes, I agree. I love that song. I'm so thrilled that the Experience Community Church let me use that song as my theme song, if you will. All right, so the other thing though is that since I mentioned the 40-day fast, it is coming up, and so if you are one that is interested in participating along with me, you are absolutely more than welcome to do so. So the rule of the fast is pretty simple. Number one, it starts on January 12th and runs for 40 days. And you are, we're fairly liberal when it comes to what exactly you do on the fast, because for different people, based on their lifestyles or health needs, you have to do what is feasible for you. However, it should, first of all, the fast is not a diet, and the fast is not like, for example, a savings plan. And this one person says, "Oh well, for the fast, I'm not going to spend extra money on something," but the real motive there was not because they were trying to make a sacrifice. Making a sacrifice would be, well, the money I spend on this, I'm going to use to help the poor or to give to my church or whatever. But instead, they were just saving up for something that they got after the fast. So that's not the same thing. It should be an actual sacrifice. The most common thing to fast, obviously, is food. And again, this is not a weight loss program, this is not a diet, this is a sacrifice to remind you of your dependency on God and to bring you closer to God over the course of these 40 days. Now, what our church generally recommends is that we alternate, depending on, like, different years they've done a little differently. Sometimes it's weekly, sometimes it's every 10 days. I'm going into this year's fast book to see what they're planning on doing. Yeah, so this time they're doing the 10-day thing. So days 1 through 10, and then day 11 through 20, day 21 through 30, day 31 through 40. And so basically what they generally recommend is throughout the fast that you avoid secular media. Now, what does that mean? That means that you're not watching. For example, every night before we go to bed, my wife and I usually watch an episode of Star Trek, the original series. Why? Because we're both huge fans of Star Trek, the original series. During these 40 days, we will not be watching Star Trek, the original series before we go to bed. We'll be watching things like The Chosen and other media that is more appropriate and godly. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that Star Trek, the original series, is bad from a Christian perspective. In fact, of all the Star Treks, I would say the original series is really the only one that genuinely passes the muster of being good for Christians, because unfortunately, almost every other Star Trek has got some elements in it that are extremely questionable when it comes to Christianity. Now, the original series has its moments too. I mean, like Kirk obviously has extramarital sex, and there's stuff in there that is not good. But overall, the show is a reinforcement of Christian morality. There are some things that are questionable, but not as much as you would typically find in television. However, we will completely abstain from Star Trek the original series during the fast, and instead watch things like I said, like The Chosen and stuff like that. So to have more godly programming. Now, because I do nerd fights, I will still go see secular movies in the theaters because that I consider while Nerd Fights obviously isn't making any money or anything right now. The ultimate goal of Nerd Fights is to eventually get it monetized and to hopefully grow an audience and make money with it. So I need to treat it as such. So since it's part of my work, that's kind of a necessity. But I won't be. But unfortunately, my wife will not be joining me in the theaters like usual because she doesn't need to for nerd fights. And so, and I won't be consuming like, for example, when I'm driving Uber, I usually listen to secular music. I have a playlist of all sorts of music, mostly stuff that I enjoyed when I was younger. So my playlist includes things like Huey Lewis Sports and Michael Jackson's Thriller and a lot of Depeche Mode and the stuff that I listened to back in the 80s. And so instead, during these 40 days, the playlist will consist entirely of Christian music. So, so that's number one. So you're basically limiting your secular intake, and you'll be amazed, truly amazed, at what a cleansing feeling that is, especially at the end of the fast. Because if you can manage to go through 40 days of abstaining from secular media, at the end of those 40 days, you're going to be like, okay, let's get back to the boys. And then you're going to realize just how bad that show is, right? And that's actually, I'll be honest with you, it was a 40-day fast from years ago. That is the reason I stopped watching The Boys. So, and don't get me wrong, if you like The Boys, I'm not saying that you can't enjoy The Boys, but for me personally, I felt a conviction that this is not a good show to watch. So, the so that's number one. So throughout the entire 40-day fast, you try to avoid all secular media or at least minimize it as much as possible. And I will tell you, that is the thing that I think has the biggest impact. And then on the alternating 10-day cycles, so days 1 through 10, we recommend that you also fast meats and sweets. And so that means that you eat a quote unquote normal diet, but you would eat a vegetarian diet, so no meat in your diet at all. And in addition to that, you would have no sweet foods, and so no dessert, basically, and no sweet snacks or anything like that. So, so no meat and no sweets during day 1 through 10, and also during day 21 through 30. And then on days 11 through 20 and 31 through 40, meats and sweets are back on the menu. However, you only get one meal a day. And so on those weeks, basically you fast the amount of meals you have as opposed to the types of food. At the end of that 40 days, then our church usually has a day of prayer at the church or something, and it's, so looking forward to that. And that week, I probably won't be able to attend the Nerd Fight stream because it's usually on a Friday night. The other thing that's going to be interesting, so the last few years I've done this on this channel, where there's a booklet that comes out every year. This is the one for this year. And it's generally speaking, there is a theme to the fast. And so in years past, it would be like great men from the Bible or something. And it would start out with characters like Moses and David and work their way all the way through to where I think the final day of the fast was a focus on Jesus. And so each one would have each day there would be a specific Bible reading and then a commentary written by a staff member at the Experience Community Church. With some of it written, of course, by Pastor Corey. Usually, Corey would write the first and final days of the fast, at the very least. It used to be in the books of the past. There were it would say who wrote each section. It doesn't do that anymore. I think that I guess they felt like it was, I don't know, maybe self congratulatory or something to give yourself credit. But personally, I don't have a problem with credit where credit is due. Is like if somebody wrote this, then you put their name on it. It's not. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing for people to know that the person wrote each section, because if you felt inspired by something, it's nice to be able to say thank you to the person that wrote it if you know who it is. But I understand that's just an editorial choice. However, this year's theme is going to be a little different. Although I think we did do a book of the Bible once before, but we are doing a full book of the Bible as the theme to the fast, and it is a doozy. And so we are going to be covering the entire book of Revelation during the fast. So how will that work on this channel? The same way as I did it before is so there are 40 days in the fast, which means so each day, like I said, it'll tell you, like, for example, on day 19 we're reading Revelation chapter 11 verses 3 through 14, and then this passage here is written by one of the staff members at the Experience. And so, yeah, and if we look at like day 1 of the fast, you guys are quiet today. Day 1 of the fast, yeah, Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 8. And then on day 40 of the fast is Revelation 22, 6 through 21, which is the very end of the book. So it's covering the entire book of Revelation. So on this channel, for every single day of the fast, starting on January 12th, there will be a video released on this channel that will basically, and I think this year, because they've expanded on the shorts format, I'll probably do them as YouTube shorts, just because that usually gets a better audience. But each day basically will be a video that will include the reading from both the biblical reading and from the pamphlet here. Unfortunately, in my voice, because I don't have the money to hire a professional voiceover artist. But hey, c'est la vie. And so if you want to follow along, you can certainly do that. You can also, I believe they usually have a digital version of the booklet available on the Experience Community Church website if you want to read it yourself, or you just don't want to listen to my voice reading it to you. And I know that last year they actually had a staff member from the church, do something similar to what I've been doing, where on the, I don't remember if it's on the church app or on the church YouTube page or something, they would do something similar where they would have a staff member reading it as a daily devotional. So for those 40 days, I will be releasing a video every single day. I'm going to start recording the videos this week and then schedule them for release during the fast. So I'm looking forward to it. Revelation. I will say this. So I have my own opinions on some things in Revelation that most of which are perfectly mainstream. I mean, I know that there are differing opinions on like, when if the there is a rapture, how the Great Tribulation works. Is it truly is Revelation written chronologically, or is it a retelling of the same story from different perspectives? That kind of thing. And everybody has their own personal opinion. The fast devotional videos, I will not be inserting my personal opinions. I'm simply going to go. I haven't read ahead yet, so I don't know exactly what the commentary in this booklet says. But whatever it says, I have faith in the staff of our church that they're not going to say anything that is blasphemous or anything like that. So even if even if I do have a disagreement with something that they put, it's not going to be a major one. There are some subtle things that I've disagreed with that Corey has said in the past, but never anything that was like, oh, I can't believe he said that. It's just like, well, that's a different take. So that's coming up. Other than that, honestly, just I didn't really have a specific topic other than to announce the fast for this year and to say welcome to 2026. So I hope that, I mean, there's a few of you here right now. I hope somebody's going to ask a question or say something, but you guys are just being extreme. Either that or this thing is just not working. Let me see, make sure. I'm going to go to my channel on YouTube and make sure that the chat is not full. No, and so far it's just Schwario. So either the YouTube chat, let me go from top chat to live chat. And there we go. Billy Phillips, thank you. Bill Phillips. I don't know why I said Billy. I really hate, and I'm sorry, this is not an important thing at all, but it's really annoying that YouTube changed the way that your name displays, so that it says Bill Phillips instead of whatever your username on YouTube was. It's now your at handle, and I find that very annoying. It's funny because Google keeps making these changes to the system that don't seem to benefit anybody. I genuinely am puzzled as to why they do it. Right? It doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. But anyway, thank you for letting me know that it's working. You guys just don't have much to say today. Okay, well, this is going to be a very boring live stream then, since I didn't come with a preset topic. I mean, now I feel bad. I should have had a preset topic so I could ramble on for the next hour and 10 minutes without having to depend on the chat. That's what I get for figuring that you guys were going to give me the subject matter today. So those of you that are watching right now, if you have anything that you're curious about, whether it's just you want to know my opinion on it, or you're genuinely struggling with something, preferably a biblical issue, not, Batman versus Superman or something like that, this would be the time to ask because no waiting. And let's see. There we go, right to it. What's your take on the rapture? All right, I will say this. I personally do not think that there is a rapture in the Bible. Now, some people find that controversial. Now, and I'm not just talking about, I mean, because obviously the word rapture is not in the Bible. But there's lots of words that you don't find in the Bible that most Christians accept, like Trinity is not in the Bible. Trinity is just what the Catholic Church, the scholars of the early Catholic Church, that was their explanation for the nature of God being three in one. But rapture is another one. The idea of the rapture is that Christians would be swept up to heaven basically prior to the end of everything. And there are people that have differing opinions as to when that rapture takes place or if there is a rapture. So you have your pre-trib raptures, your post-trib raptures, and then your non-raptures. And this is one I've always been I've always been kind of a post-trib rapture kind of guy. And it was Corey, the pastor of the Experience Community Church, when he taught Revelation a few years ago, that it convinced me that maybe the rapture is just a legend cooked up by Christians. But they get it, they get the idea from Christ stating, and in fact, let's find it real quick. So, but I understand why people do believe in it. Okay. So, I'm just doing a cursory search here. And it looks like we need to go to First Thessalonians. And. Alright, so I'm going to switch screens so that you guys can see what I'm reading. One thing, Corey said this last night, and I've said it before, but I want to repeat. Uh, if I'm stating something as being, oh, this is a biblical fact or a biblical truth, don't take my word for it. You know, look it up yourself. And that's one of the reasons that whenever I quote the Bible, I try to put it up on the screen so that you can see where I'm getting it from, so that you can see that. And you know, the website that I use is BibleGateway.com, which they have pretty much every translation of the Bible available to you for free, by the way. You can pay for Bible Gateway Pro, and that's what gives you like the Greek and Hebrew and all that. But BibleGateway.com is free in and of itself. And then if you have one of these things, this is something called a book. And I know it's something a lot of people these days don't know about, but you can actually see it there and verify anything and everything that I tell you. But anyway, so that was just me being a little snarky. All right, so First Thessalonians 4:16 and 17, it says where a lot of people get it from. So let's take a look. We'll just read this whole passage here. It says, brothers and sisters, starting at verse 13, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. That is the basically the in a nutshell where the rapture in Scripture, the closest you come to it. And it does seem pretty clear on a cursory reading that, well, Jesus is going to come, he's going to shout in some way, loud voice, trumpet, and then all the people who are dead, and as well as people that are alive, will go up and live forever with the Lord. But notice one of the most important things about this particular passage, and when you reconcile this with what you read in Revelation about the end of days, and that is the fact that it does make it perfectly and plainly clear that this is not like, oh, all of a sudden, all like you see in some movies, all of a sudden the Christians just disappear and go up to heaven. This is the resurrection. This is all. This is the time that all the dead will rise, and this is basically Judgment Day. So this and so it, and based on what we see in Revelation, the resurrection is after all the crazy stuff that happens on Earth. The resurrection is after the end of pretty much everything. So if you happen to have survived the tribulation and all that, then everybody who's left will be called up along with the dead for final judgment. And then, so then there's another passage that's cited here pretty commonly. Let's see, 1 Corinthians 15. Let's go there. 1 Corinthians 15 and looks like 51, 52 is where it's saying. All right, so we'll start at about verse 50. That looks like a good spot to start. And says, I declare to you, brothers and sisters, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Listen, I tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed. In a flash, the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For the perishable must clothe itself with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality. And so again, this is looking at this is humanity going to heaven, but this is again talking about the dead rising and stuff. This is the resurrection and judgment, not just suddenly Christians disappear and everybody else has to go on living for a while bad things happen on earth, which is generally what the pre-trib and mid-trib people believe, is that the Christians are called up to be spared being on earth when all the bad stuff happens. The problem is that there's stuff in Revelation that it does say that Christians will be spared God's wrath, meaning that God's wrath will not be poured out directly on Christians, just as you could say during the original Passover, the angel of death did not claim the firstborn of the Jews, but only of the Egyptians. Doesn't mean that they weren't there when it happened, right? So I think people get that confused. Make sure that's not something urgent. Yeah. All right. And then you have a couple of other passages where Jesus himself kind of hints at what some people take as being the rapture. So what I'm going to do is Matthew 24. And this is the one I usually think of when I think of verses that people use to describe the rapture. All right, so in fact, I even have it highlighted here. So because this is one that it's kind of funny. Whenever you hear someone claim that they know when Judgment Day is coming, uh, you know, I'd always recommend that you point them to this particular passage, because Matthew 24, in this passage makes it clear that anybody who says it's going to happen on November 13th, 2029, that person is being blasphemous by saying something like that. But about the day or the hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be coming at the Son of Man. Two men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. Two women will be grinding with a handmill, one will be taken and the other left. And the funny thing is that, and I've talked about this a little bit before. Most people think of this, and this is where we get like from books like Left Behind and stuff, where people are just walking along, and poof, all of a sudden one of the people just disappears because they've been raptured up to heaven, right? But that's not what this is describing. Think about the analogy that this passage is. This is comparing what people are thinking is the rapture to the Noahic flood. It's saying that, okay, people will be living their lives, everything will be normal, and then boom, stuff is going to go down, right? And so, so when it says one will be taken and the other left, it's not saying one is like whisked away to heaven and all that. It's saying just like, you're sitting there, people were just sitting there before the flood, and then bam, all of a sudden everybody's wiped out. Taken means die. It does not mean, whisked away in some happy ethereal thing. So that's a very long-winded way of saying, Bill, that I think that the rapture is a myth. That being said, if you are one that wholeheartedly believes that in some way, shape, or form, Jesus is going to whisk away all the Christians before all the bad stuff happens. If you're right, awesome. That means that we Christians don't have to deal with some of the bad stuff. However, I would ask yourself to stop and consider the fact that Christians aren't spared anything else in this life. I mean, generally speaking, Jesus even says, hey, life's going to suck. But the nice thing is that you have something beyond this life to look forward to. So I think that the people that think, oh, we're going to be spared of it, that seems kind of inconsistent for the way that God does things. It doesn't seem like Christians are generally spared from bad times. But if you're right, awesome. That means that those of us that don't believe in the rapture, well, we'll be like, whew, I'm so glad you were right. And if you're wrong, well, I'm not going to sit there and say I told you so, because I'm not going to, another thing that, people argue whether, oh, well, the Great Tribulation is happening now because, look, Donald Trump is in office and he's a horrible person. Or, hey, the Great people said the same thing. Every couple of years, somebody's saying it's happening right now or it's about to happen. You know what? It could be happening right now for all I know, because of the extreme metaphor and apocalyptic language used in Revelation. It could be going on around us right now, and we just don't realize it. Or maybe it's not going to be for 10 billion years. I don't know. But the idea is that you should be ready to face God today or 100 years from now, whenever your time is. All right, so let's move on. Josiah says, how's it going? Why hasn't there been a church live stream on Tuesday? Well, I did kind of warn you guys. This last Tuesday was, you got to think here. Let's see. I know 2 weeks ago, this end of the year thing. So 2 weeks ago, Tuesday was my wife's and my wedding anniversary. And then last week is because I was kind of dealing with stuff. However, starting this week, we're doing a new schedule for the weekday live streams. I'm going to experiment with doing them in the morning instead of at night. So keep an eye out for that. If I can get things together, the first one will be tomorrow. Beavis and Butthead versus Cartman and Kyle. Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, Beavis and Butthead, I think, are older, and so they probably got a height and reach advantage, and probably a little bit of strength. Although they're none of them are. I mean, Kyle is probably the most fit of any of them. So, but I don't know that Cartman's not going to be able to do much, but I think Beavis and Butthead would have no problem with Cartman. Kyle, I think, might give him a little bit of a fight, but I still think that Beavis and Butthead, just the fact that they're high schoolers and stuff, is going to give them too much of an edge. So I'm going to go Beavis and Butthead. Mo from the Three Stooges versus Ernest. I'd say probably Mo. I mean, he's taken hammers and anvils and stuff like that to the head and keeps on going. I don't. I've never watched any of the Ernest movies, but I assume Ernest is a normal human being. Trek reviewer in the house. Good to see you, my friend. I hope that you are doing well. And and of course, Josiah, man, I know you love asking these this versus that, but I prefer the theological stuff, to be honest. But he says Cotton Hill versus Philip J. Fry. Come on now. Cotton Hill, I mean, against a normal human opponent, Cotton Hill is going to be darn near unstoppable. And Philip J. Fry, well, nice guy and all, dumb as a sack of rocks, and honestly, from what we've seen, not much of a fighter. Mr. Worf versus Regent Worf from the Mirror Universe. Well, considering, so you're talking about like the Deep Space Nine Mirror Universe stuff. Gosh, I'd have to rewatch. I barely remember Worf from those Deep Space. I didn't care for the Deep Space Nine Mirror Universe stuff because to me that's not the Mirror Universe. It's just a weird parallel timeline. But I would probably have to go with Regent Worf, but I'd have to put an asterisk on that saying pending further review. Mike Richards, the best thing to come out of Columbus, Ohio, ever. Is greetings to another hospital slash physical rehab stay. I'm sorry, that sucks. But I'm glad that you're with us, Mike, and I hope that you are doing as well as you possibly can. And Darren R. Wagner, good to see you, says Demifoot versus the Suburban Sasquatch in a golf match. Now that's interesting that you included the golf match part. Now, from what we've seen, the Suburban Sasquatch is the suburban. Besides, I mean, the Suburban Sasquatch has a very impressive reproductive organ, but other than that, doesn't well, and is capable of ripping people's arms off, but doesn't seem to be particularly dexterous. Now, the only thing I've seen of Demifoot, and for those of you that don't know, Demifoot is Darren Wagner's comic. Correct me if I'm wrong, Darren. That he's currently producing. And Demifoot looks like he's quite able to do fine motor skills in comparison. So I think that I'm going to have to give that one to Demifoot over Suburban Sasquatch. Do your mime impression. Okay, here he goes. You ready? There you go. That was my mind impressing. DS9 Mirror Universe versus Discovery Mirror Universe. Well, in a lot of ways, and even though, don't get me wrong, Deep Space Nine is a far better show than Discovery. So I'm not trying to suggest any kind of comparison as to quality of the show. But I actually have similar beefs with both because they're not the mirror universe. Now, Discovery does take it a little bit further than Deep Space Nine does because Discovery actually makes it so that there's a biological difference between mirror universe people. Uh, uh, the with the whole sensitivity light, although Lorca seems to be the only one that actually ever affected for some reason. But I don't consider either to actually be the mirror universe because uh, they're divergent. The thing about the mirror universe and the whole point of the mirror universe is that it's a mirror. Like, so when Kirk and crew switch places with evil Kirk and crew, it was obvious that everything was the same in both universes, but flipped, right? And in fact, right down to the fact, like McCoy, remember when they were in sick bay, and McCoy points out a spot where he spilt acid on the counter, and that same burn was in the counter in the mirror universe, even though there's also the obvious differences of people's attitudes, and it's the empire instead of the federation and all that. When we look at Deep Space Nine, it's no longer like if we were looking at the Deep Space Nine parallel universe, then the Terran Empire would be in control of Deep Space Nine, but the difference would probably be how they took control. Rather than the Cardassians peacefully withdrawing, it would probably be that the Empire came in by force and took over and oppressed Bajor that was being defended by the good Cardassians. It would be something like that. But the events would work out the same, but with opposite attitudes behind everybody, right? So the Bajorans would have been allies with the Cardassians, but are enemies of the Empire. So Kira would actually probably be doing her terrorism thing while working for the evil Cisco, who is running Deep Space Nine. And so, but instead, what they did was they said, well, because of, at the end of Mirror Mirror, Kirk tried to convince Spock that the Empire was pointless and that he should try to take it down. And in the Deep Space Nine Mirror episodes, they kind of played into the idea of, well, Spock was successful. And so, but because Spock was successful, the Empire weakened and then other forces took over. Okay, fine, but now it's no longer a mirror universe, it's just another timeline. And Discovery did something very similar to that, except that Discovery takes place before Mirror Mirror. But this cannot be the same universe that Mirror Mirror takes place in. Why? Because basically we see a divergence when the Defiant goes back in time from In a Mirror Darkly, and so, roughly, 80 or so years prior to Discovery, the Defiant was found by Archer, who was subsequently murdered by Hoshi, who became the first Empress of the Empire. I'm guessing she's probably, Michelle Yao's Georgiou is probably descended from Hoshi. And I wish they had built that into Discovery. That actually would have been kind of a cool little Easter egg. But because of this divergence with the Defiant, the Empire was able to build up technology faster than in the original timeline. And so that's why Emperor Georgiou has this mega planet killer ship that we don't see any hint of that kind of technology in Mirror Mirror. So, so I don't think that is truly the Mirror Universe either. I think both of them make the mistake of forgetting that the mirror universe is supposed to be a mirror of the universe, not a completely different timeline where everybody just happens to be evil. So, yeah. Josiah says, I was on the news of beating up someone trying to rob me with boxing gloves on my channel. Oh, I was on the news of beating up someone tried to rob me with boxing gloves. It's on my channel. Okay. Someone I'm a little confused. So somebody tried to rob you while they were wearing boxing gloves, or somebody tried to rob you of your boxing gloves, but you beat somebody up that was trying to rob you. Good job, I guess. Best mime impression ever. Thank you so much. It, it, I've been working on that impression for years, so I appreciate it. I truly do. Empress Hoshi Sato versus Salty. Depends on what the contest is. I mean, because let's be real, beauty contest, Hoshi obviously wins. Fist fight, okay, yeah, I'm old and I have MS and all that, but I'm 330 pounds. I would absolutely crush her. I'm 6 foot. I'm almost 6 foot two. I could just give her a hug and break her back easily. So, so in a straight up fist fight, I think I could take her. However, she's definitely more ruthless. Up there, we're not going to price a publisher because I haven't found a good book publisher yet. I think I think he's trying to do crowdfunding for the publishing. And Darren, if you're still listening, feel free to post. Well, I don't know if you're a moderator, but uh, you know, use clever text to tell people how to get to your crowdfunding. Garrick versus Harry Mudd. Oh, come on. Garrick is an absolute beast of a killer. Harry Mudd is just a swindler and a scallywag. Now, if you're talking about Harry Mudd from Discovery, he's also a murderer, but I don't think he's on the level of Garrick. Worried Academy is going to soil Cisco. That's the least of my worries with Academy. I don't know. I don't know why you're saying that. I mean, I haven't watched any of the preview stuff for Academy. So, is there some reference to Cisco in there? But look, if you're honestly, I don't like saying this because kind of goes against what I believe philosophically. But I would say if you're going to watch Academy, probably best to not think of it as Star Trek. Robert says shalom today. Shalom, shalom, Robert. Good to see you. They tried to rob me wearing boxing gloves. Well, that seems kind of stupid. I mean, don't get me wrong. Mike Tyson wearing boxing gloves at his peak punches you in the face, you are going to be unconscious, right? So I'm not suggesting that someone wearing boxing gloves can't hurt you, but boxing gloves are designed to prevent injury. That's the whole point of boxing gloves, is to make it so that A, the person throwing the punch doesn't injure their hand, and B, when they actually connect with you, it doesn't break your jaw or something. Instead, you just get a blunt impact. So I think that if you're going to try to rob somebody, best to not be wearing something designed to prevent them from being hurt. I meant Garrick versus Harry Mudd in a debate. Oh, well, then I think it would depend on the topic of the debate. Because Garrick is very intelligent and very well spoken. But Harry Mudd is an effective con man. I mean, I know we see him lose against Kirk whenever we see him, but he wouldn't be where he was if he did manage to convince a bunch of dilithium miners to buy some discount wives, which was pretty funny, and he took over an entire planet of robots. So Not to mention, if you watch the animated series, he does some shenanigans there. So I would, with Love Potion of all things. But in a debate, Harry, I think, would at least, depending on the topic, might have a fighting chance. Like, I would say Harry Mudd would probably have a chance of winning a debate with Garrick if the topic was, say, unrestricted capitalism. If because and by the way, we never do debates right anymore, which is one thing I would love to get into a debate with somebody, an actual moderated debate where we did it correctly, particularly when we talk about theism and stuff like that. Because basically, people say, is Christianity the best thing for society? And one person says yes, and the other person says no. That's not how a debate topic works. A debate topic is a declarative statement. So the debate topic might be Christianity is good for society. And if you say yes, you need to offer why that you think that's true. If you say no, you need to offer why you think it's not true. But you don't ask a question with the topic. You make a statement, and then people either agree with the statement or disagree with the statement, and have to put up their arguments as to why. One thing that like when the debate topic is something like, is there a God? It always comes down to the atheist just saying, I don't have anything to prove, and you can't prove God exists. Okay, fine. Then why are you here? But if the debate topic was, say, God exists, all right, then the person who says that agrees with that statement would want to show evidence that there is in fact a God. Uh, if it were me, I would probably focus heavily on things like the cosmological argument and stuff like that. Um, Whereas the person who disagrees with the statement and would say God does not exist cannot now hide behind the idea that, well, I just lack a belief in God. Well, fine, but you're debating the topic God exists and you're taking the negative. So offer your evidence that God does not exist. It's no longer a matter of, and this is unfortunately why many atheists won't have this kind of debate, because they don't want to have that honest discussion where they have to actually support their position. Instead, what they like to do is simply say, I don't have to support my position because my position is just a lack of being in your position, or something to that effect. But I think Harry would be an effective slimy debater in the same vein as how atheists try to get their way around debate by manipulating the topic. I think that Harry Mudd would do something similar to that. Garrick is very much an expert at that kind of thing as well. But Garrick is less a con man and more of, he's just deep undercover spy, and so he's very good at lying and manipulating circumstances. But he's not so much a con man as he is just a person who's a chameleon. So I think Harry would have an advantage there. Buffalo Bill versus Norman Bates. Interesting comparison since both of them were cross dressers. But I would dare say I think Buffalo Bill has the physical edge on Norman Bates. And so, yeah, I would have to give it to him. Yeah, I saw an article that the Academy might discuss Cisco and emissaries. We'll see. Yeah, I'm not particularly worried about it because, I think anything they touch on academies is probably not going to be great. But I'm still hoping that it is great. We'll see. What do you think about what Trump and our military did in Venezuela? Okay, I'll be completely honest and transparent. I don't know all the details. So if somebody throws in some detail that I'm unaware of, I'm willing to be corrected on anything that I'm about to say here. My understanding is that the United States, under the direct orders of the POTUS, has in fact staged a coup in Venezuela. That we are in direct control now of the Venezuelan government, and that we have taken the president of Venezuela as prisoner. I find this disturbing. I don't really know of any other way to put it. I find it extremely disturbing. Don't get me wrong, I am not defending Venezuela. I'm not suggesting that Venezuela has been a wonderful neighbor to us in the South. You know, do they ship drugs to the United States? I'm sure they do. Is it the major source of drugs in the United States? Absolutely not. And I think that pretty much everything we've done has been Trump trying to flex and show what an alpha male he is, rather than him using policy effectively and doing things quote unquote legally. So, for example, these Venezuelan boats that were supposedly running drugs that we blown up, and there's been more than one. It's just the one we always hear about because of the second shot that was fired at the people that survived the first shot, which is a war crime by definition. It is absolutely a war crime to, and Darren, if you're still here, he knows this full well. If you hit a ship, all the sailor, and the ship is disabled and sinking, those sailors are no longer considered combatants unless they are actually actively trying to fire upon you. You have no, they are to be treated as basically as civilians at that point. You can take them prisoner, but you absolutely cannot shoot them. And so, what they did with that second firing on the boat, assuming that that's all true, is an absolute war crime. However, there's a better way to deal with this because, you know, it's funny. We have a whole branch of the military just for this. They're called the Coast Guard. And so, if you can spot these Venezuelan boats coming to the United States, assuming that's where they were actually going, and they were supposedly bringing drugs into the United States. Well, guess what? You take a Coast Guard ship that is far superior to these Venezuelan boats, and instead of just blowing up all the evidence and killing everybody, you capture the boat, show the evidence, and take all those people prisoner. That's how you do it. And you certainly don't. I'm sorry, there are a bazillion corrupt governments around the world. You don't just go send Delta Force in to capture people and take over. That's I don't, I mean, I don't even know what to say. And if you're cheering this on because you think Venezuela is bad, again, I'll agree with you that Venezuela is bad. But the United States is not supposed to be taking over other countries. And now, and correct me again, I could be wrong about a lot of this stuff. So if I am, feel free to correct me in the chat. But apparently, he's doing it for the direct purpose of creating more profits for American oil companies. Because what's he been talking about doing? Well, now he's going to send all the big American oil companies into Venezuela to build up their oil production. Well, gee, who's going to profit from that? The American oil companies. And so, and not only that, now look, again, I'm not agreeing with Venezuela, but so they're if I remember correctly, a communist country. I know that the oil is nationalized there, so the government was getting all the proceeds of the oil. We don't have the right to go in and change their system of government. Unless they are an, at war with the United States. And by the way, at war with the United States doesn't mean trying to sell us drugs. At war means they're an actual threat. So, like, even though he was ultimately was proven wrong. When George W. Bush went into Iraq, it was under the pretense that Iraq was manufacturing weapons of mass destruction in order to attack the United States. Again, it turned out to be wrong, but at least there was a pretense there that Iraq was a threat to the United States. When we went into Kuwait, it was because Iraq unjustly invaded their neighbor and we went in to defend. Which, by the way, we probably should have done. When Russia, well, that's a whole other thing. But the so if the country attacks another country, regardless of whether they're an ally or not, I don't think that Kuwait was actually an ally of the United States. But let's say if Venezuela invaded Chile or something, right? Then I would have no problem with us sending the United States military to Chile to defend and push Venezuela back. And depending on how aggressive they were, even push into Venezuela and take out their government. However, at that point, it's up to the people of Venezuela to install whatever they want. We don't just take over and call the shots for them. So, but Venezuela is not a direct threat to the United States, and they're not an expansionist country, from my understanding. So I think what we did was wrong, and you know, I'm saddened that there are people that are cheering on Trump for that. So that's my opinion on it, Robert. Less cuts and blood with boxing gloves. Yes, that is true. Which, if you're trying to rob somebody, doesn't sound like a smart way to go. Why so many thumbs down? What do you mean? Thumbs down on what? On this live stream, I don't, doesn't look like we have a lot of thumbs down. Not sure what you mean. Who would get promoted first? Wesley Crusher or Harry Kim? Oh, Wesley, of course. I would love to see something like if you could do this on lower decks, which I know lower decks doesn't exist anymore, but where you had like Admiral Wesley Crusher and Kim was still an ensign. Josiah says, my church is smaller than yours and is growing and doing a fundraiser to expand the church. Well, okay. I'm not sure what the point of that is, other than I would say I'm not a fan of that. Okay. So here's what our church does. If we need to build a building, or we need to expand the parking lot or whatever, we either have enough money or we don't. We don't do special fundraisers to pay for church projects. Like, we were going to a Baptist church prior to the church that we attend now. And at this church, in the parking lot, they wanted to redo the parking lot a little bit. That would add a few spaces, but they needed like another $100,000 to do it. And actually, I think it was more than that, but I think it was like 200,000 or something. But the pastor then, so they had a special offering so that people could donate extra money just for the parking lot fund. We don't do that at the Experience. Instead, everything comes out of the one fund. The only thing we don't do special collections at all, but we do sponsor various 501c3s, both religious and secular. But what we'll do is say, hey, if you want to support these guys, here's their information so you can do it. And the church will also give a hefty amount to those 501c3s directly. usually in the tens of thousands. And when we do our worship nights a couple times a year, whenever we sell merch like T-shirts and baseball caps, and that money all goes to the 501c3 that we're supporting for that particular month. But we don't at church service throw around a special collections plate to help out doing this or doing that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's evil for churches to do that. I just prefer the way we do it. If you have the money, you have the money. Also, our church doesn't take out loans. We're building a new campus in North Murfreesboro. We bought a strip mall, and we're refurbishing a couple of the businesses at the strip mall into a new church. And the funny thing, there's a Dollar General, it's a big store here in the South, that's in that strip mall. We now own that Dollar General. We own the land it's on. They are a tenant of ours. But the nice thing is when their lease is up, if we need to expand that church, we'll have all that floor space. But but when we bought the place, we didn't take out a loan to spend. I think it was like $5 million or something for the strip mall. It might have been more than that. But they just wrote a check, and they didn't do a special collection to do it. They just saved their money. And part of the way that we did that is by owning the building that we're in outright, so we don't pay rent or a mortgage, which is the biggest expense for a lot of churches. Worst TV producer: Alex Kurtzman versus Fred Fellberger, producer of season 3 of Star Trek and Space 1999 season 2. I don't think season 3 of Star Trek was as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. Yes, there are some bad episodes, but there's some really good episodes too. I mean, like Let That Be Your Last Battlefield came out of season 3, which is a very good episode. As for Space 1999 season 2, yeah, it definitely kind of missed the mark, but I think it's because they went into this more fantastical thing with aliens and stuff, and they added the character of Maya, which I think was a mistake. But I would, and Alex Kurtzman, I also think gets kind of a bad rap because a lot of people think that Alex Kurtzman is responsible for Star Trek Discovery, which really is the worst thing that came out of the new era of Trek. But the truth is that Alex Kurtzman was not the original showrunner for Discovery. And a lot of people forget this. Look it up. He was brought in, and guess what? One of the first things that he did as a course correction in season 2 was to bring in Captain Pike and Spock. And of course, that was so popular it became Strange New Worlds because everybody was like, that's what we want. And then the next thing he did was send them into the distant future, which is where the show should have taken place in the first place. Now, don't get me wrong; it didn't become a great show after that, but it certainly improved. Season 1 of Discovery was absolute unwatchable crap, but at least with moving from season 2 onward, it got better. And actually did a few good things, like bringing in Captain Pike or the weird species that we got in season 4 and stuff like that. So I think Kurtzman is not nearly as bad as people make him out to be. So I'm going to probably go with Fred, even though, and that's mainly because of Space 1999 season 2, not really because of Star Trek season 3. Lore Reloaded in the house. Good to see you, buddy. So this just came in from everything that I can see. This was not a constitutional act. It's a way to try to bypass constitutional law, probably illegal. But it amazed me. We did this before. I assume you're talking about the Venezuela thing. So, oh, you just came in, not this Justin kind of thing. So yeah. And let me see, what's that? And we got 20 minutes left. Just to make sure you guys know, I will be wrapping it up when that 20 minutes goes off because, going out to eat with my daughter for her birthday. Though the country of origin for all of this fentanyl is China, I guess Trump doesn't want to go to war with them. Of course not, because in a shooting war with China, we would lose. And and I know people are, well, we're the America, we're the best, blah, blah, blah. China's got so much more military assets than us. We would run out of bullets before we beat the Chinese army. And mine's showing 131 thumbs down. Yeah, yes for this stream. That's well. I don't know where you're seeing that because, uh, you know, on my end, I see no thumbs down. Only a couple of thumbs up, but I don't see any thumbs down. So I don't know where you're seeing that, Robert. Besides, YouTube doesn't publish thumbs down, so how are you seeing it anyway? You're going to shut down the store? I mean, the Dollar General. No, no, no. Dollar General, we're not shutting it down. They're just our tenants. But when the lease expires, which isn't for, I think a decade or something, but when the lease expires, if we need the room, we can not renew it. At least you didn't have to deal with the new weird Klingons anymore after season 1 or 2. Well, the weird Klingons were still, yeah, that was another big problem. But yeah. But the funny thing about the Klingons, let me say this for a second. I know a lot of people got really worked up about the Kling orcs, right? And the right? The people hated them. And I understand that. They were kind of weird. But you know what? When Star Trek the Motion Picture came out, same thing. I'm sorry. It was just a redesign. And I don't understand. When I first saw Star Trek the Motion Picture, and I saw Mark Leonard as the Klingon captain in that opening scene, I didn't throw a fit and say, how dare they change what the Klingons look like. I just thought, oh, so that's what they think the Klingons should have looked like all along. And I think that people get really too worked up about they changed something, it's different and therefore bad. Look, Strange New Worlds doesn't look different than the original series. Yes. Do you really want them to make a show that has plywood and cardboard sets and cast resin jelly bean buttons for everything? Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's not a charm in the design of the original series. I still think the original series bridge is the best looking bridge of all of Trek. But if you're to do a new show, I think when you look at the Strange New World set, it looks like, okay, this is a modern take on that same bridge. And I don't have a problem with that. People getting all worked up because it looks a little different, I think they need to loosen their panties a bit. And Street Preacher R says, happy birthday to Ebony. I will pass that along. In my opinion, the jury's still out on Alex Kurtz because we still have the End of Strange New Worlds and Starfleet Academy to go. Yeah, I will say this. So I know that I think that the as far as the new generation of Trek, okay, Discovery, absolute crap. Picard, I'll give a meh to. Not a huge fan. But honestly, it was just kind of there. I didn't care for season 3. Like, I know a lot of people think season 3 was awesome as crap, but it was not as offensively bad as Discovery. Strange New Worlds, I really like. I know some people don't, but I really like it. Lower Decks, I absolutely loved. Except for when they took the humor a little too far, but then they dialed it back because I think they realized they took it too far. So basically we've got 2 good, 1 really bad, and 1 meh. And so and of course Section 31 we shall not talk about. But but we'll see. Starfleet Academy could be absolute crap. It could be meh. It could actually surprise us and be good. So we'll see. He's using a Google add-in that is notoriously inaccurate, if I had to guess. Thumbs down thing. Yeah, probably. Because, yeah. And there aren't 131 views. I would be really amazed to get 131 downvotes would be have 131 people watching. And I haven't had that many people watching in a number of years, not since I came out as a Christian. And let's see. I didn't know you could utilize the United States military special operations and most advanced aircraft carrier to do so and not be an act of war. I stand corrected. Saying that the Joseph. Oh, I missed that. I'm sorry. Joseph says serving an arrest warrant is legal. This is fine. No, it is not legal to invade another country to serve an arrest warrant. You're out of your jurisdiction. Like if the federal government puts out an arrest warrant on you because let's say you committed some federal crime. Okay, a lot of people don't realize this. You tint your front window of your car, that is a federal crime. So let's say that they put out an arrest warrant and the FBI comes knocking on your door and they arrest you because, hey, I got an arrest warrant for you. That's all perfectly legal. You know what's not legal? For them to fly to another country, drop in special forces, abduct you, and then say, oh, by the way, we're accusing you of this. No, that is not legal. Now, if we declared war against Venezuela and all that, yeah, I'd be fine, but that requires congressional approval, which Trump would not get. So, yeah. Uh, is it war if nobody is fighting back? They literally fired on U.S. forces. I'm not sure exactly what incident you're talking about, so I'll just leave it at that. Are you worried about this being another Iraq Hussein? 40 plus people died, including civilians and soldiers. I'm worried that this is an illegal, that this is A, illegal, B, like Russia, not Hussein, Iraq. I would tend to agree with that, Laura. I think that it is an illegal action on the part of Trump, and it's making the United States out to be a global bully. And all we're going to do is basically create a coalition of other people who will become our enemy. And we don't want that. Economically, it would be disastrous for us. And, it could potentially lead to a war that we would end up losing. And I don't think anybody really wants that. I'm using a modded Android app for YouTube. Well, obviously, your modded Android app is woefully inaccurate if it thinks that. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Laura. Um, I'm not 100% sure I understand the meaning of that text, Laura. So I'm sorry. But that modded Android app is obviously inaccurate. Or maybe that are you saying that you're talking about something else? Let's see. Uh, uh, I, I think I need to be talking to you because I'm not sure what you're trying to say. How about Star Trek Scouts? Oh gosh, that show is so painful to watch. Star Trek Scouts is obviously a show that was written as something else that they just threw a few Star Trek references onto. And I haven't watched it since the first like 6 or 7 episodes or whatever, but man, every episode was exactly the same. I love anti won't get into the part of this conversation until like 20 years later, given how long it takes him to read comments. Uh, okay. He no longer responds to anti. Yeah, it's salty now, but that's okay. He's 20 years behind. Commander in Chief is only the Commander in Chief if Congress says there's a war. I don't think that's right. No, it's not right. But what is right is that the president still has to act within the confines of international law. And a war crime is a war crime, regardless of whether you're the Commander in Chief. By the way, Commander in Chief does not mean absolute dictator. That's why there was that whole thing about what's a legal versus illegal order, illegal orders are a thing, and a lot of people don't, want to deal with that. I was a military police officer. We learned all about illegal orders because you are not only allowed to disobey an illegal order, you are obligated to disobey an illegal order. Now, there are times when it may not be clear if an order is legal or illegal, and if you're not sure, then you generally follow the order and you let time sort it out. And generally, the person who gave the order is the one held accountable, as opposed to the person, unless it's for example, if you get an order saying to transport a package to someone, and that package is carrying illegal drugs, but you don't know that, then the person giving the order is the one that's going to get in trouble. If you're given an order to shoot an innocent child and you do it, then you are on the hook for that because that is an obvious illegal order. What country is next on the chopping block for the Trump administration? Mexico, perhaps, since they're so corrupt. They're also, all those cartels are also. Yeah, that's the funny thing. If Trump really wanted to suggest that we're at war with Venezuela because they ship drugs here, we should be invading Mexico based on Trump standards. Because Mexico is, I mean, he even calls, illegal immigrants invaders just to try and, whatever, just being stupid. So yeah, why don't we just invade Mexico, make them the 50? He's so desperate to get a 51st state. He should invade Mexico, and then he can rename it Trump Land so that he can have another thing with his name on it. He'll always be anti-trekker to me. What is Star Trek Scouts? I don't think I've seen it. It's a Star Trek show for 3-year-olds, and I'm not saying that to be facetious. It literally is, and it's really really bad. You search for it on YouTube. You can find like at least the first 6 episodes on YouTube, but it's really bad. Though probably won't happen since they don't have all the natural resources Venezuela has. Well, that's the thing. He I think that a lot of people have these weird ideas on how gas prices work. And so I think he's doing it to try and say that look how he's fixed the gas problem. But yeah. Oh no, you misunderstand anti-salty butter muffin, whatever you go by. Yeah, butter muffin's good. You can just call me butter muffin from now on, Lord. As long as he's commander in chief, he can do what he wants. Let's go full California on Thailand, babies. Yeah. I know you're being sarcastic there, but that's the attitude of a lot of people. They think that because he's the commander in chief, he can just order the military to do anything he wants, like they're his personal brute squad. And I'm sorry, that's not. Generals are in absolute command of their troops. Does that mean that some random general can just order his troops to go invade San Francisco? No, of course not. There are rules. And yes, there are rules that even apply to the POTUS. And, I'm sorry for all you people that think that Trump has absolute power. That's not how the presidency is supposed to work. In fact, the entire point of our civics system, the 3 branches of government that we have, is to limit the power of each branch. Trump has been systematically, from day one of his second term, been trying to destroy that boundary so that the president has more and more and more power. This is illegal, it's unconstitutional, and I guarantee you that if the Democrats win the House in the midterms later this year, you better believe that the first thing they're going to do in 2027 is to file articles of impeachment. And I will tell you straight up, as a conservative in this country, any Republican who does not vote to impeach him this time around is betraying the trust of the people because Trump has absolutely committed high crimes and misdemeanors this time. You can make all the arguments in the world about how innocent he is about the other 2 impeachments. This time, he has gone bat woman crazy with some of the stuff that he has done. And I'm sorry, I don't understand people that still support him. I really don't. If you are still a Trump supporter, man, I'm scratching my head trying to understand why. And don't tell me the prices are lower because they're not. I mean, yeah, the price of eggs are down, but that's because the bird flu problem was resolved. It had nothing to do with Trump. And by the way, the eggs going up had nothing to do with Biden. It was just because of a bird flu problem. People think that every little thing that that the president does affects every part of the economy. That's whatever. He used Trump class cruisers to make Trump. Oh, yeah, he wants to make a Trump class cruiser. I forgot about that. Oh, my gosh. This guy is such a narcissist. He's trying to make the United States into his personal domain, and his supporters love it. I. What's wrong with you people? Not you guys here today, but people that are supporting Trump on all this. Joe says, no, not anything he wants. POTUS says Venezuela is a threat to the U.S. as a narco-terrorist state shipping drugs here, so he took defensive action with the military. That's not the purview. Here's the problem. The president doesn't get to unilaterally declare war. It takes Congress. That's in the Constitution, by the way. Only Congress can declare war. And you don't just abduct the leader of another country and then say, we're going to run your country. All right? That is, it's beyond illegal, okay? It is. And just because you say, oh, they're a narco terrorist state, doesn't mean that they're actually a narco terrorist state. Do we get drugs from Venezuela? Probably. Do we get all, but like somebody else already posted, the vast majority of fentanyl comes from China, you know. And guess what? A lot of other drugs, they come across the border from Mexico. They come in from Cuba. They come from all sorts of places, not just Venezuela. He's just singling out Venezuela because I think Venezuela he thinks is a target that he can take. There are a lot better threats you could deal with than Venezuela. Mexico is a better threat, is a bigger threat than Venezuela. Russia is a much bigger threat than Venezuela. But no, we're not going to deal with Russia. We're just and by the way, you know what? All the I'm sorry, this is where my conspiracy hat goes on, but I think this is true. You know what all this crap is? It's just to get people talking about anything but Epstein. That's all it is. I'd argue the president's weakest branch domestically, with the exception of executive orders, which are themselves limited. You're 100% correct. And in fact, one of the problems there, Laura, and is that like everything that Trump has done via executive order can be reversed by one executive order from the next president. And so don't think that he's fixed anything with his executive orders. But the president has much more unilateral authority when it comes to international politics, which is why so many presidents try to focus on international affairs rather than domestic. But domestic is what really needs attention right now. And so, but that's why he can do the tariff thing, but he can't do anything about the cost of goods in America, right? And Joseph says, "Come on, Auntie." Salty, but whatever. We already knew they were going to toss all sorts of impeachments at him if they win 2026. Oh yeah, but this time I think it's 100% legit. I think I would absolutely, if I were sitting in Congress right now, even though like I would run as an independent, but let's say if I was part of either party, it would be the Republican Party. I would absolutely vote to impeach the president right now. And so I hope that they impeach him at the beginning of next year. I truly do, because he has gone off the rails. And if you can't see that, I'm sorry. You need to stop being in your little MAGA groups and start thinking critically and look at what's actually going on, and stop thinking that 100% of everything that people say that's bad about Trump is somehow fake news. Notice that when a reporter asks Trump a genuine tough question, he'll go, "Oh, you're a nasty person. You're a little piggy," or whatever he wants to say. He'll insult the reporter rather than answer legit questions. Why? Because he is exactly the wrong person to be president of the United States. Just like the video I watched the other day, now the DOJ is trying to get legislation passed deeming pocket knives considered deadly weapons. Yeah, so-called conservatives. Yeah, I haven't heard about that, and that's the. I only got a couple of minutes left, so just to warn you guys, I haven't heard anything about that one, Robert. Defending the U.S. from terrorist threats doesn't require a declaration of war. We haven't had a declaration of war since 1942, and Venezuela is not a terrorist threat. I'm sorry, they're not. Selling drugs is not terrorism. I understand it's not good, but it's not terrorism. He's just calling it terrorism to try and give himself more power. And that is deceptive. It's lying. And he's, man, if you can't see that, man, I'm sorry. You need help. If those get passed, just imagine how many people will piss off and perhaps lead into an armed uprising. I doubt it. And then Laura says, by that logic, but doesn't say about what. I carry a pocket knife myself, as many people do in the South does. I don't carry one, so it doesn't really affect me. I think calling a pocket, I mean, because look, if you're going to say a pocket, if you stab somebody with a pocket knife and you're charged with assault with a deadly weapon, I'm fine with that. You know, I don't. If you want to, any kind of knife is a potentially deadly weapon. Heck, if I stab you with a screwdriver, that you could be charged with assault with a deadly weapon. That's perfectly okay. What if you want to say it's on the same grounds as a firearm where you need a permit to carry one concealed, which you don't really need in Tennessee. But if you needed a permit to carry around a pocket knife, then you're being silly. Multi Gunman says, how's it going? I'm doing all right. Just getting ready to wrap up here. We have open carry laws in the South, so why a knife if you're so worried? Yeah, I'm not worried about it. Oh, sorry, I'll say sorry. Oh, I'm not offended by it, but anti-trucker is a name I gave up a while ago because people were offended by it. I expected them to manufacture 2 or 3 impeachments this time round just so that they could get outdo the first time round, so it'll be fun. You know what? I know that you think that the Democrats are just a bunch of schemers, and don't get me wrong, I don't agree with most policies of the Democrat Party. However, right now, the president is, man, open your eyes, please. Open your freaking eyes and look at what he's doing. The man is breaking the law left and right, and people just say, "Oh, like with the whole thing with illegal immigrants. Well, illegal immigrants don't get constitutional protection of due process. Yes, they do, because how do you prove someone is an illegal immigrant? By taking him to court. What's court? That's due process. You don't just bag them and ship them down to another country. That's not how it works. The ICE agents don't get to decide whether you're illegal or not. They can arrest you if they have probable cause, which a lot of times they don't, and then take you to court. But they're arresting people who are going to court, who are trying to do it legally. They're arresting people who have applied for asylum, which is legal in this country. And so, I'm sorry. Just because they're from another country doesn't mean they don't get the right of due process. Due process covers everyone, not just American citizens. And if you don't understand that, you need to take a freaking civics class. Did you hear what Trump said when he asked when asked if what he did was legal? He said, "I hope they would appreciate it." No defense. Yeah, of course not. Why? Why? He can't defend it from a legal standpoint. Everything Trump is doing because of the Epstein files so he can stay out of jail. I think it's more than that. I don't know what's in the Epstein files, obviously. Maybe Trump's not implicated in anything in the Epstein files, but I guarantee you that he's trying to protect people that are in the Epstein files. Because if they actually release the unredacted Epstein files, a lot of extremely powerful people would go down. And so I think Trump is desperately trying to protect those people. And I think it's disgusting. I say release the unredacted files, 100%. Even Clinton said that. And you know Clinton is implicated. Sorry, Salty, I have my eyes wide open. I'm quite happy to finally be getting what I voted for. Well, if what you voted for was someone who says, laws be damned, we're just going to go in guns a blazing, then, dude, you're a traitor to this country. I'm sorry. If you don't believe in the Constitution, obviously. You don't believe in the rule of law, obviously. You're not a conservative at all. Because you know what? Trump is not a conservative. Just because he says, oh, I'm pro life, and just because he uses illegal immigrants as his scapegoat for everything, that doesn't make him conservative. His terror policy is as liberal as you get. He's trying to tax and spend the crap out of this country. And then when he gets in trouble for something like the Epstein files, oh, let's start a war. Oh my gosh. And then he's going to say, I deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm sorry. If this is what you voted for, really looking at it right now, and you say, yes, this is what I voted for, then you are a traitor to the Constitution of the United States of America. Pocket knives have different uses, especially here in the South. They're multi-purpose tools here. Yeah, I get that. Look, a pocket knife is a tool. I get that, but I'm not overly worried about it being called a deadly weapon because it is a deadly weapon if you use it as such. What have conservatives been conserving over the last few decades? Shipping our jobs overseas and importing the third world. No thanks. And what do you think? How do you think tariffs are going to fix that? I'm sorry. You know what? I understand. You're just giving the same talking points he gives, right? But guess what? He hasn't fixed anything. He just says he has. Oh, yeah, the economy is A plus 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 plus. Bull crap. I'm sorry. The economy, you know what? I live on Social Security and I got to drive Uber 7 days a week just to get by. So don't give me some crap about how great the economy is. If the economy were so great, I wouldn't be struggling just to keep my house. So I'm sorry. That's a load of crap. He lies to people and just says everything's great, and people swallow it because that's what they want to hear. He lies to people and says, like remember they showed the picture of the guy, and over his knuckles they type on MS-13. He says, see, it's right there tattooed on his knuckles. It says MS-13. That's a freaking. It's not even a good Photoshop job, right? It looks like a 2-year-old did it, and he's sitting there acting like that's real evidence, and people believe him. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit there and call him names. I'm not going to insult him personally. But his actions are the very definition of abuse of power, high crimes, and misdemeanors. He needs to be removed from office. He absolutely does. And I'm sorry if that offends somebody. I'm sorry. If you love him, you have that right. But I understand that you may want a strong, positive, alpha male leader, but that doesn't mean we need someone who's a traitor. And let's see. Joseph says, just this week, the left was defending Somali daycare fraudsters. Now they are defending a communist tyrannical dictator. Okay, so first of all, I don't know anything about the Somali daycare thing. I don't know what you're talking about. As far as a communist tyrannical dictator, am I defending? And I'm not a liberal, but but anybody that's talking about it's just like people say, oh, you're defending what's his name that was deported. No, you're just saying that he gets due process. You don't get to just go in and remove a government and take over. That's not how it works. If you don't understand how that is illegal, then you don't understand anything about civics. Could you imagine what your reaction would be if Russia dropped some paratroopers into Washington, D.C., abducted Trump, and then said, oh, we're going to run things for a while? Would you be okay with that? I don't. And they said, well, Trump was a corrupt politician, and therefore, no. You don't get to say that just because you think he's a communist tyrannical. First of all, being a communist is not a crime. I understand we disagree with it from a philosophical perspective because we're supposed to be capitalists, but we're not capitalists. We're fascists in this country. And I'm not saying that to be insulting to Trump. We're fascists under Democrats and we're fascists under Republicans. This is a fascist system. The problem is that people have been brainwashed into thinking that fascism means the Nazis. That's not what fascism means, right? You don't have to be racist. You don't have to be a military dictator to be a fascist. It's a system of economics where the government controls private enterprise through intense regulation. That's what we do in this country. That's fascism. Instead of capitalism, in which you don't have the regulation oppressing business. We're not capitalists. Or socialist, where the government directly controls business. We're not that either. Right? So it's crazy how he's able to get them to like the wrong side, take the wrong side of every issue. He's not. You know what? The problem is what you're doing is you're manipulating what they say. So he abducts some illegal immigrant or someone accused of being an illegal immigrant. He abducts them without a trial, sends them to El Salvador. And somebody says, whoa, 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 that's a violation of due process. And you say, you're defending illegal immigrants. No, we're saying that you need to get due process no matter who you are. There's a difference. So stop manipulating what people say and listen to what they're actually saying. Instead of listening to Trump saying that they're defending illegal immigrants, listen to what they say and then make your own mind up. The rule of law exists in this country for a reason. After all, I agree with you. Trump needs to be held accountable. He absolutely does. There is no rule of law under Trump. There's a rule of Trump. U.S. hasn't recognized Maduro as the actual leader of Venezuela since 2019, and he's had an indictment on him for drugs and weapons charges since 2020. That doesn't mean you can send special forces in and abduct him. That's not how it works. If you ever set foot in the United States, yeah, you could arrest. You know, it's like what's the name? Roman Polanski, horrible person, child molester, convicted, right? Flees the country before his sentencing, and I don't. I think he's still alive, living in luxury in another country, right? If he ever set foot in the United States, he'd be immediately arrested and imprisoned, right? But now he's so old that it wouldn't really matter. But we don't send paratroopers. I think he's in France. We don't send paratroopers to his home in France to arrest him. That's not how the system works. There are borders, and we do not violate those borders. And if we do, we have no right to complain when other people violate our borders. If you want to say what he did is okay, then you can say nothing about somebody coming across the southern border of the United States, because what they're doing is far less than going in and abducting the leader of that country, regardless of whether you agree with that leader or you think that leader is a criminal. You know, a lot of people think Trump is a criminal. I'm not saying, well, he's a convicted criminal, but I'm not saying that he's, well, he needs his day to be accountable. I do think that he's done some things that are illegal for sure. But that doesn't mean you send paratroopers in and abduct him. All right, guys, I do need to wrap it up. This has been a really good discussion. I really would like to keep going, but I got to get going. I'm going to read these last two comments from Joseph, but that's it. It's very telling the streets of Venezuela are filled with people celebrating while New York City streets are filled with people crying. I'm sure. I have not seen footage of people in Venezuela celebrating or otherwise, but I still think it is wrong to go in and to take over another country like that. Just make it the next state. Why don't you? And I would not be surprised if he declares that Venezuela is the 51st state and he calls it like the state of Trump. Israel went to Argentina and scooped up Adolf Eichmann and put him on trial, which is exactly what the U.S. is doing. First, I don't know the circumstance with Adolf Eichmann. I don't know who he was or is or anything like that. But let me ask you this: if let's say Israel sent a hit squad out to murder someone. Does that make it okay for Trump to do that? No. It has nothing to do with it. That's called deflection. I don't give a crap what Israel did because you know what? We are not Israel. If you want to argue about whether or not what Israel's doing in Palestine is justified, that's a whole other discussion. However, that doesn't mean that it's okay for us to replicate it, even if you think it's justified for them to do it. We need to follow the law. We need to follow the United States Constitution and international law. And Trump is doing neither. And that, in my opinion, is what makes him a traitor.